Hi guys, it's Anne here, and today's video is a little stroll down memory lane. I wanted to do a recap video of the 2015 holiday collections. I did a similar video for the sort of summer makeup, so 2015 summer makeup, and I talked about when I did that video, I really wanted to do a holiday one. I've actually wanted to do this video for a while now, because I'm just one of those people that I like to reminisce. I like to look back and see what was popular when and why. I picked 2015 because that's 5 years ago. It's a nice roundish kind of number. It's not a round number, but you know what I mean. And 2015 is like the first year that I kind of really got into YouTube makeup and YouTube video. So kind of anything pre-2015, I don't really have a connection with. I don't have a relationship with. So for me, this was like my first year into learning and understanding about this makeup. And I'll be honest, like all of these items, I wanted all of them. I didn't buy any of them though. Like I actually don't have any of these makeup items. So I apologize, I'm gonna be looking down a lot because I'm gonna be looking at my computer just to look at some pictures and look at some information. Let's just take a little blast from the past, and it's kind of nice to think of simpler times before COVID was even a thing, or even the 2016 election, or the 2020 election. Let's not go there. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about is the Too Faced holiday set. So for me, when I thought about this video and thought about the holiday collections, this was the first thing I thought of. And I wasn't sure if it was this year that had the sets that I was thinking about or not, and it is. So this was the year that they did sort of the Parisian type pop-out style packaging. They started this sort of stylish, like that kind of style, maybe not the pop-up, but the kind of style that year was. Started around 2013, and 2015 and 2016 were very similar. 2015 was like the Parisian style, and then 2016 was like the New York style. You could pretty much do a whole video on the Too Faced stuff. The three things they released that year, the first was the Le Grand Palais set, which had just like the one eyeshadow palette. It had like 3 longer eyeshadows at the top, 15 eyeshadows in the middle, 2 blushes, a bronzer, and highlighter. It also came with a mini of the Shadow Insurance Primer, Melted Lipstick in Peony, and a Better Than Sex mascara, a mini. Again, this was like a really nice looking palette. This set was $59, which I think about it now, like at that time that seemed like a lot of money, but I think about like that palette now, it's like, yeah, 59 is actually not that bad. It's still kind of pricey for what it is. The Petite Maison set was pricey. It was $39, but it's only 12 eyeshadows. The other set was the Le Grand Chateau set. And this is the one that came in like the Chateau, which I think Le Grand Chateau is supposed to be like a hotel. And then it had the 3 different palettes, which you could divide the palettes up and share them. So they've kind of continued that. They actually have that this year with a 3 different palette set. I was kind of curious to see how similar those are. So I looked up all the pictures, and I'll put them up on the screen so you can see the comparison. They're similar but different. It seems like, again, they're keeping with a similar trend. And the one thing that about these palettes, I think it was Marlene Estelle mentioned that these ones were made in China, whereas their other stuff's not necessarily made in China. So I think the quality of these, and I still think this is a thing where the quality of their holiday stuff is not necessarily the same as the quality of their other products. So it's kind of like a buyer beware. That's why I haven't purchased any of their holiday stuff, because I'm just like, it's pretty pricey. Yes, the packaging is pretty, but is it really worth it? I don't know. Like I said, I've never bought any of their holiday stuff. I like this style, and they've sort of really replicated that this year. I feel like that, the light pastel with like the fine, I don't know how to explain that style. I don't know what that style is, but you know what I mean. I feel like this year they've kind of really replicated that, and I think the style of what they've done this year is really pretty. I liked what they did last year. I think last year they had the one palette that had the different pieces on it, and that was a really cute palette last year too, and I heard the quality of that one was not too bad as well. But yeah, I feel like Too Faced really definitely puts the holiday in the holiday palette. Like when you look at their collection, you know it's their holiday palette collection, whereas some stuff, it's released as holiday, but it's just a release. Like they just released it at the holiday time of year, but there's nothing about it that looks holiday-ish. You know what I mean? The second item I want to talk about is the Urban Decay Vice 4 palette. So this was, again, their 4th Vice palette. I feel like Urban Decay could release a Vice palette now and actually do a pretty good job of it. Like I feel like, well, I don't know if they would do a good job of it, but if they did do a good job of it, I think people would want it. It's interesting how Urban Decay has sort of like the 2 styles. Like it has the original Urban Decay grungy, I forget the name, like that lettering that they have for the Urban Decay. Their original Urban Decay, like There's a name for that. I can't think of what it's called, but if I can think of it, I'll put it up on the screen. And then they have like the Urban Decay Naked stuff. Like it's a totally separate brand. But yeah, this was a really nice palette, really popular. Not my style necessarily. Like the colors in this, I'm kind of like, I like some of the colors, but not others. So I don't know if I would have bought this. They did release the Spectrum palette that year, and that palette, my friend actually picked it up when we went to Trinidad for Carnival, and I'm like kind of jealous because I really wanted it. I still kind of really want the Spectrum palette. If they released a similar palette to that, I would definitely be into it. The third item I want to talk about is the Becca Afterglow palette. This is another palette that a lot of people raved about, and I feel like Becca could release this again. I would suggest maybe not releasing the exact same thing, but they could release a very similar palette. Maybe swap out a couple of colors. Keep, I think it's Wild Honey, keep maybe a bronzy, I don't know if they want to keep topaz, but something similar to topaz, and then swap out the others for different colors. I think this would do really, really well. The next item I want to talk about is Colourpop. So I talked about this in the 2015 summer. I feel like 2015 is when Colourpop really started to pick up momentum. I think they started in 2014, but 2015 is when I'm pretty sure they just sent out a lot of PR. Like, I don't know what Colourpop did, but they somehow, like, did a really good job in terms of, like, growing really quickly. Like, I can't think of any other brand that sort of blew up as quickly. Maybe Kylie, but Kylie had her family name. Like, she started with something. Like, she didn't start with nothing. She started with, like, a name brand, like already a brand identity, whereas Colourpop didn't. So I don't know. Anyway, there was 3 Colourpop gift sets. There was the Lippy Stick set, the eyeshadow, Super Shock eyeshadow set, and then they had like an eyeliner and eye gel set. It's almost like quaint when you look at their release. I'm trying to film this really quickly because I'm losing my light. It's so dark out, and it's not even, it's 4 o'clock. Anyway, it's super cute looking at Colourpop then because it's so different. Like, they would never release anything like this now. Like, the one thing that I would say is Colourpop, 2 things I would say is Colourpop. I think their graphic design is so much better, obviously. Like, they've definitely upped the game there. Like, I don't know who they've hired to do their graphic design, but those people are doing a bang up job. And the other thing, though, that I don't like about Colourpop is they release too much. I feel like they release way too many things. They retire things way too quickly. So if something is good, like, they had a few products, like, that they kept around for years, and they could still keep some of those products around. So I don't know why they retire everything. Like, keep a handful of, like, OG stuff and then bring in new stuff. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why they've, like, turfed pretty much everything that they used to have like 3 or 4 years ago. I think there's a handful of stuff. Like, I want to see the BFF liner. Like, there's some very few things that are still sticking around. And I think it's a little sad. Like, it's too much. It's too fast fashion for me for makeup. The next palette that was a big hit was the Kat Von D Mi Vida Loca palette, which is kind of funny because Kat Von D just has tanked since then. She was actually not known, well, maybe some people probably knew she was a crappy person then, and I don't know when she married the idiot she married now. But anyway, don't want to talk about her. This palette was really nice. I wanted this palette. This was, again, a really unique palette. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a rainbow. It's very aesthetically pleasing. It's very funny that the style of this, though, is very similar to the Beach Zodiac palette, which I just talked about in a previous video as a favorite. Everybody raved about this palette. Everybody talked about how good this palette was. The one thing I want to say is, when you look at all the palettes, this must be pre-warm tone fanatics because everything is either cool tone or neutral tone. There's some like hints of warm tone in some of the palettes, but this is clearly like warm tone city. And I like this. Like, I like that we're getting back to this because I think these kind of colors work better for everybody. Like, warm tones are nice, but they don't necessarily work for everybody. Whereas I feel like there's a bit more of like an underlying neutral tone for everything. The next collection I want to talk about is the Tarte Light of the Party eyeshadow case. Now, I really wanted this. I liked the case and I didn't like the case. I liked that the case was like the sequins and sparkly. I didn't like that the pattern was like 80s sweater. Like, I was like, who decided this pattern? It doesn't fly. It doesn't look great. But again, this was definitely a very holiday palette. The other thing that I actually really wanted, Emily Noel mentioned this, was the Tarte Greatest Glitz palette. This is where you got like a multiple set of palettes, but it was only available at Ulta, which is super annoying. Like I found this, I think Tarte did this a lot, and they still do it. Every time Tarte releases something and they release like an Ulta version of something, I'm like, I want the Ulta one. Like the Ulta one always seemed to be the one that I wanted. And I'm in Canada, we don't have Ulta. COVID totally ruined that because we were supposed to get Ulta, and we're definitely not. I don't think we're even getting it now. Like I don't think they're coming. They've kind of put a hold on it, and I don't see it happening. So yeah, this one again was definitely a very holiday palette. Like you looked at it and you knew this was a holiday palette. I liked the case. It was interesting that the case had like the travel palette as well as the big palette. Like it seemed you got like a lot for your money for this. And again, very like cool neutral tones, which is very interesting. The next thing I want to talk about is the LORAC Mega Pro 2 palette. So this is their second year for doing a Mega Pro palette. This one didn't really speak to me as much as the first one, but again, another LORAC is just becoming available now in Canada. It's actually being sold at Shoppers Drug Mart, but at this time it wasn't available in Canada, and it made me so sad because I really, really wanted these palettes. Again, maybe not this one so much. I feel like I liked the first one and I think the third one. I sometimes have a hard time with, like, the palette's actually kind of similar to my shirt color. When a palette has a very rich color, I feel like it takes away from the shadow colors. Like, I would prefer a palette be very neutral in tone. Like, be like, you know, white or black, or like a light blush color or a light tan color. Like, something that's not going to really contradict with the shadow colors. Because I find it hard to look and actually see the colors when the palette itself is very colorful. Does that make sense? The next thing I want to talk about is the Smashbox Art Love Color Palette. I think this was a holiday release. This is another thing where I feel like Smashbox, the concept is there. It was a nice concept, but execution-wise, it looks shitty. And I feel like Smashbox does this all the time. It's like, I get where you're going, but you didn't do a good job. Like, the full palette with all the colors is really nice. It's really interesting. Like the outer packaging was really nice with like the elastic on it. But when you open it up and like the round pans with like the plastic flips, it just was so reminiscent of like the like drugstore makeup that you get, like the stuff that I have from like the Color Institute or the Color Workshop. That's what it reminds me of, which is a shame because I think Smashbox has good quality, but I feel like the style of this palette just did not hit the mark. And like, it's a shame again, because like the outer style, it looks really nice. And I feel like Smashbox does this a lot. I feel like they have a lot of similar type of palettes like this. Like I'm thinking of one that Emily Noel reviewed last year or the year before, where it had like the different pieces you could clip in and out. It's like, in theory, I get where you're going with it, but in execution, it doesn't work. It's like, Smashbox, you maybe need to look at different package designers. The next holiday palette is the Makeup Forever 15 Artist Eyeshadow Palette. I feel like, for me, Makeup Forever is overlooked. Now, when I look at this palette, I always think of Ruby Rouge, because I'm pretty sure she's panning this for years. And this palette, again, somebody mentioned like the outside. Again, the style of the orange with the red lips. It looks like Halloween, like it's not. I think if they had done a different glitter color, it would look a lot different. Like had they done like a green glitter, it would actually look holiday, or red glitter, or a blue glitter on the outside. But the orange with the red lips is just like, I don't know why you picked the orange. And then when you open it up, it actually has like more bluey shadows. Like it doesn't, I don't get it. This again, palette didn't really, like those teal colors don't really speak to me. But it's funny because like looking at this, and I don't know if Makeup Forever does these palettes anymore, but I feel like they should, because apparently the qualities were really, really good. I think this was a type of palette that was overlooked. I think it was a little bit pricey, but I think if you looked at the individual Makeup Forever shadows and tried to like add it all up, it actually is a really, really good deal. And then there's two more palettes I want to talk about that weren't actually holiday palettes, but they were released in the fall of 2015, so everybody was talking about them. The first is the ABH Self-Made palette. This was released in October of 2015, and I really feel like ABH could re-release this palette. Like, it's an interesting palette. I don't know why they don't re-release this one, or the one, and again, there's probably a reason why they can't, but the one that was the Makeup by Mario one, I think that's what it was called. Like, that palette looks really good, and I really wanted that palette. I don't know, I just feel like ABH sometimes, like, they could do better. So they're kind of going all over the place, it feels like, and it's like, maybe rein it in a little, be a bit more thoughtful, stop just trying to push out product, maybe, you know, regroup. And then the other palette that was released that fall was the Tartelette in Bloom, which just seems so weird because I feel like I feel like the Tartelette in Bloom has been around forever, yet I also feel like, oh, is it just released in 2015? Like, that's not it's only been around for 5 years. And it's a palette I still want. Like, I would definitely purchase this palette now. I just have held off on buying the Tarte palettes because they are a little bit pricey, but I've heard this one's really good. If you have that palette, I'm curious to know, or if you still have it, like if you had it and you decolored it, I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know if you have it now, if you like it, because it's like, I feel like this color story is my color story. Like, I prefer this one. If I were to get any of the Tarte palettes, I'd get this one. I'd get the original one, but I definitely would skip the Toasted, I think. I think the Toasted is not really up my alley. I feel like the Toasted came out 2016. I should look that up when that came out. Anyway, I'm definitely losing my light. Oh, it is 4:15. Like, this is ridiculous. It is so dark out. But yeah, I just found like this was really, really interesting. A couple things I wanted to mention. Seems like this year is when Tarte blushes were sort of at the top of their game. Everybody was talking about Tarte blushes. Tarte actually had a blush palette that a few people talked about. I feel like, again, this was also peak Kat Von D. Like, I feel like everybody was talking about Kat Von D at this time, like talking about her Metal Crush shadows. I think that's when they came out, was this year. Her liners, her liquid lipsticks. But yeah, clearly not popular anymore. And yeah, it's interesting to see how things have changed and yet how things have stayed the same. Like, that's what I'm thinking about. It's like, there's some things that have really, really changed. And there's some things that it's like, you could release one of those products this year and people would be like, oh, it's new. Whereas other stuff you could release, if you released it this year, people are like, oh my god, this is so 2015, you know what I mean? Definitely would not release that Smashbox Art Love color palette. Ew, like, that would just be panned if anybody released that today. Anyways, hopefully this video wasn't too rushed. I feel like I talked really, really fast, again, because I just want to get this video done and filmed, but the light is just not working in my favor. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my tiny little channel here in Toronto, Canada. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye.